the... Where? What? Apologies for my death a second ago. Welcome to the Sulfur Caves. If you're wondering why I died, it's because I'm currently exploring Minecraft's most toxic update yet. And no, I'm not talking about the community. This time, I'm actually talking about the blocks that I'm stood on. These are Cinnabar and Sulfur, two new materials that are going to be added to Minecraft. They aren't actually out yet. In fact, we aren't actually getting them in the game until summer, but they were announced. And my friend Ozander was able to make a resource pack adding them to the game, as well as part of these caves. The reason I say they made part of these caves is because I have expanded them slightly. Sorry, Ozander. But let's look past all that, and just engross ourselves into this. After all, this is a really good opportunity for me to teach you all about mineral formations, pollution, and toxic substances. Hi, I'm Josax, Minecraft's most educational idiot, but in the real world, I study geology and the environment. And while I haven't specifically studied about Cinnabar and Sulfur, I have learnt a lot about similar minerals and the effects of the two as pollutants. And I've just done a ton of extra research all about them in order to make this video. So, get ready for a deep dive into these toxic sulfurous pools. Actually, you know what? I don't think I'm going to take a deep dive into that. I reckon I'm just going to stay away from that. Seems smarter. So let's start off with sulfur, the cool yellow mineral. First off, it's an element, the 16th on the periodic table, and quite common in its native form here on Earth. Which means that it's not really mixed with any other elements, it's not a compound, it's just pure sulfur. Sulfur in its native form is what we're seeing being added to the game, this beautiful yellow colour. And in real life, it's often associated with hot springs and volcanoes. Hot springs are directly connected to volcanic activity and magma chambers. This creates super hot pools of water on the surface that have gases like hydrogen sulfide rising through them, emitted by the magma. The heated water is the perfect condition for the hydrogen sulfide gas to then become oxidized, reacting with oxygen to form water, and more importantly, native sulfur, which is now insoluble and deposits on the bottom and side of the pools. This is how I think the sulfur should be forming here in the Sulfur Caves. Native sulfur can also be found in, drumroll please, the real world. Yay! Mostly around fumaroles, which are vents releasing sulfur-rich gases from volcanoes. And this is where we mine most of our sulfur from today. Remember the gas I was talking about before? Hydrogen sulfide? Well, it's toxic. Of course it is. It's about half as toxic as hydrogen cyanide, and what it does is it inhibits your cellular ability to respire. And that doesn't mean it stops you from breathing. Respiration isn't breathing. Breathing is breathing. Respiration is the long-winded process your cells do to break down sugars and create ATP. This ATP is basically a currency of energy and is used to release energy your cells use to break down and build molecules. Without respiration, guess what? Your cells die. Which, of course, eventually leads to you dying. Fortunately though, hydrogen sulfide stinks. It's what makes that horrible rotten egg smell. So it's quite easy to avoid. In fact, if these caves were real, you'd potentially be able to find them by smelling them. Actually, that'd be pretty cool. What if Mojang added smell-o-vision? Although it wouldn't be a nice smell, and it'd probably be quite bad if your computer produced hydrogen sulfide. You know what? Scratch that. Mojang, please don't add that. There's one last sulfur compound that I want to talk about. Sulfur dioxide. And it's produced both naturally by volcanoes and artificially by burning coal. When sulfur dioxide reacts with water, it produces sulfurous acid. Now, that could make acidic pools, like down in the caves, or it can react with water droplets in the sky and cause acid rain. These days, fuel regulations require coal to have its sulfur removed in a process known as desulfurization. This is so that industrial coal burning won't cause acid rain in industrialized areas, which was a big problem back in the 70s and 80s. As for the block itself, not particularly dangerous, apart from by blunt damage. But it would be cool if sulfurous pools caused acid damage, and it's cool that sulfur gases being emitted cause nausea. Feels very fitting. I have some ideas for sulfur uses and mechanics that could be added in the update, but I'll talk about them towards the end of the video. First, let's discuss Cinnabar. This is Cinnabar, a brilliantly red mineral that has for centuries been used to make red dyes and pigments, including for clothing. Its chemical formula is mercury sulfide, and it is in fact our main ore for mining mercury, which yes, we still do. Now, mercury is probably setting off red flags in your head for poisoning and, being toxic, and I will get onto that shortly, but first, let's talk about how Cinnabar actually forms. When hot mercury-rich water comes into contact with sulfur, the mercury reacts with it and precipitates into mercury sulfide, which then forms a mineral structure to become cinnabar. And this process is very common in veins of hot springs and volcanic environments, basically wherever there's hot water and mercury, and lots of sulfur. I'm not too happy with the design it has in the Sulfur Caves, since it doesn't really look like veins of sulfur, but the two could definitely be together in the same rock, and then get eroded to form caves, so I'm not too mad. Now for toxicity. Cinnabar isn't actually that poisonous. In this form, the mercury can escape the sulfur, and is quite safely locked up as a mineral. But when heated, that mercury can then escape and cause issues, and native mercury can be found within cinnabar deposits. So the real toxicity comes from that mercury poisoning, and this native mercury is, surprisingly, not that big of a worry. Mercury is dangerous, but it isn't very easily absorbed into the skin or gut, and it's mainly in a vaporous form where it can be inhaled that it's actually dangerous. No, the more toxic forms of mercury, like with sulfur, are its compounds, specifically organic compounds like methylmercury. In this form, methylmercury is very easily absorbed into the body, and can even travel around it, crossing barriers into the brain and even across the placenta. So it gets everywhere, and when in your body in high enough concentrations, it can cause damage to your brain, kidneys, and your lungs. And it also increases chances of cardiovascular diseases like heart attacks. It also causes many diseases, notably Minamata disease, but there are much better videos about that on YouTube. I'd especially recommend SciShow's video on it. It's very interesting, but quite disturbing, and shows how corporations can just be straight up evil. Methylmercury doesn't just come from rocks though. In the Minamata disaster, it came from the Shiso Corporation dumping inorganic mercury into the water, which sulfur-loving anaerobic bacteria then turned into methylmercury. Now, the biggest reason this methylmercury caused so many problems was its bioavailability. Organisms readily took it up and incorporated it into their cells, making it become bioaccumulated. It started off with plants absorbing it from seawater, but then animals ate those plants, and now it's even higher concentration in those primary consumers. And that keeps on going up the food chain, until you get a dangerous amount in the tertiary consumers, or apex predators. This is known as biomagnification, and it is a very dangerous feature for a pollutant to have. So we've spoken about how sulfur and cinnabar form, then why they're the deadliest additions to Minecraft. Lifestyle looking blocks. So what now? Well, here's some ideas that I actually had for the update. First off, to make sulfur replenishable, make sulfur precipitant a thing. It can form on the edge of sulfur pools, and if you break it, you can get sulfur dust that can be crafted into sulfur blocks. One thing I've seen go around a lot is a new type of bone meal, because sulfur is used in fertilizers in real life, and I totally agree. That'd be sick. But an expansion of that would also be new crops. Sulfur compounds are responsible for the smell of garlic, so why not add garlic to the game? It would be so cool to see new foods and crops, especially since our palette is currently so limited. Like, why is beetroot our most recent farmland crop? It was added with the light. Anyways, my last idea for a use of sulfur is, now, hear me out on this, making sulfuric acid. Imagine brewing a splash potion of acid with sulfur dust, and upon impact, it breaks blocks. Maybe certain blocks with higher calcium carbonate content, like dead coral, calcite, and dripstone, which are all made out of calcium carbonate, would break faster. And this is based on the fact that calcium carbonate in the real world is easily dissolved by acids. The only issue with this that I can see is, I don't know if Mojang would really like us throwing acids at each other. Could be a pretty interesting PvP mechanic though. But anyways, that's it. I'm excited for a geology update, even if I would like a little bit more, but I'm happy with this. Geoscientists are eating with this update. Mostly, not literally. But yeah, thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel, and I really hope you all learned something. And if you've watched to the end, you probably enjoyed the video, at least a little bit, and don't hate my voice too much, so consider self-scribing, or self-liking. Okay, that was awkward. Can we end the video now?